Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of a man with resting crime face to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. And the logical fallacy we're looking at this week is red baiting, also known as reductio ad Stalinum. Excellent. Which, of course, is a play on reductio ad Hitlerum.
Absolutely. So we've talked about that one in the past, although we haven't done a full episode on it.
Oh, no, we should do that.
And this is kind of the other end of the political spectrum, although you wouldn't know it from the people who tend to invoke this fallacy.
Yes.
It's basically calling someone a communist based on nothing other than the fact that you don't like their argument and they're politically to the left of you.
Yeah. So like Attila the Hun, everybody is a communist. Yeah. Yeah. Nigel Farage, Attila the Hun is a communist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our first example from Trump comes from the day after the vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. And this was Trump's take.
I thought that wasn't even a contest last night. She was terrible. She was, I don't think you could get worse, and totally unlikable. And she is. She's a communist. She's left of Bernie. She's rated left of Bernie by everybody. She's a communist. We're going to have a communist, and she's going to be, in my opinion, within a month. Look, I stood next to Joe, and I looked at Joe. Joe's not lasting 2 months as president. Okay, that's my opinion.
She's not likable, and she isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's just not likable.
He said she was rated left of Bernie by everyone. There's not that many people who do that kind of rating. But GovTrack do that kind of rating. And they did rate her that year, or the year prior to this, because they do it like at the end of each year. So the year prior to this, they did rate her the most liberal senator.
Right.
Bernie was like 0.02 and she was 0.01 or something like that. So it was really close. And the following year, Bernie, they flipped round. So Bernie was the most liberal and she was just slightly less. And it's based on their voting records and, public statements and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
didn't we remember when we did that survey online?
Yeah, isidewith.com.
Yes, exactly, yeah. We were outrageously socialist. Yeah. Oh, my God. Bernie would even, kind of gasp and stretch his eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of partly the thing is that to someone like Trump, or to say a real Republican, the people...
Right. Yeah.
The people on the left... the people on the left in the US, the Democrats, and even the liberal and progressive wing of the Democrats are extremist, and yet for large parts of the rest of the world the Democrats aren't very liberal. They're reasonably moderate. Even the most liberal of them aren't kind of that extreme.
They're sort of centre of centre.
Yeah.
Aren't they? Yeah.
One of the things that is very, very clear is that none of the people who say any of this know what communism is at all.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, granted that. I think even Karl Marx would kind of go, oh, yeah, it's a little bit communist. I think you've kind of somewhat perverted Marxism there, fellas.
Yeah, and this is essentially a form of guilt by association, because by likening people to communists, or calling them communists directly, but by calling them communists, you're likening them to the people who people think of when they think of communism, like Stalin.
Somebody with a pointy hat with a beard. And
so that's the kind of the heuristic. That's what comes to mind when you think communism is Soviet Russia, breadlines, all of that kind of bad stuff.
Yeah.
And so just by invoking
and also
that,
taking your property away, there's that implication that all of your private property will be taken away from you and redistributed to other people of whom you do not approve. it's that kind of that's I think is the inherent sense that, well, they're a communist, they're going to take everything that you have worked hard for away.
So our second example from Trump comes from one of his standard tirades against the media.
ABC is so bad. CBS, so bad. NBC, I made a lot of money for NBC with The Apprentice, right? A lot of money. A lot. Plus, we had the #1 show a lot, and they had nothing in the top 10 except a thing called The Apprentice. And they treat me so bad. I brilliantly said, well, one group I know will treat me well. NBC. I call it Comcast. You know, it's owned by Comcast.
I brilliantly said. Yeah, I love that.
Here's the thing I brilliantly said.
Yeah.
I don't think that's based on anything. They're not like owned by a Russian company, or it's just Comcast, Comcast, commies are bad. That's all you need to know. And it's weird. I mean, I've just made this ignorant kind of association. Yeah.
Because I'm stupid.
Just a bad thing.
Yeah.
Incidentally,
bad thing.
As is my want.
Yeah.
He made a claim.
Check the ratings. Yeah.
Because he said that he made a lot of money for NBC. I'm sure that's right. Because NBC, when The Apprentice started, were coming off the last seasons of Frasier and Friends. They already had a lot of money, obviously, based on stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they didn't really have anything else to replace those shows with. So their ratings did dip. And The Apprentice did okay for them. So I'm sure that he did make them money. They kept it going for 15 seasons.
Bloody hell.
So it must have made enough in advertising to make it worth doing that.
Yeah. Plus it's cheap.
Really reasonably cheap. But he said that it was the #1 show. And they had the #1 show a lot. And I know that is true at some point, because when you go into Mar-a-Lago, there is a framed page that has been ripped out of the TV guide that shows The Apprentice at #1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I couldn't find a picture of this, but it's mentioned in an article, I think by Vanity Fair maybe.
Right.
But I don't need to find a picture of it to know that it was the TV guide edition that covered April 15th of 2004. And I know that because that's the only episode where it was #1 ever for 15 seasons.
Oh my! What? Wow! Wow! Why was that? Because there was a tsunami.
Just ER wasn't that good that week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Its first season, it averaged 5th. Was beaten by the last season of Friends.
All right.
Its second season, it was 14th. It never again made it into the top 30. By season 10, it was 113th.
Fantastic. Things like Alf.
Yeah.
Beating it. Yeah. Reruns of Alf.
Yeah. Once it was #1. That's it ever.
Wow. And that's the one that he's torn out and put up.
But for the whole time it was on, up to when he ran for president, he was saying it's the #1 show on NBC.
Yeah. I think the apostrophe S is was rather than is.
Absolutely,
yeah.
The publicity guy for The Apprentice, a guy, I think his name was Jim Dowd, said that he used to get, the day after the show went out, he would get a call at 8 a.m. from Trump saying, what are the figures? And every week he would say, the numbers don't come in until 10 a.m., Mr. Trump. you have to call me back. I'll let you know when we know how it is.
Every single week. How brilliant is that?
But he was obsessed with his ratings, as he has continued to be.
Always is. Yeah.
Our final example in this section is from a campaign video on behalf of Herschel Walker, but mostly featuring South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. It's quite a weird video.
Very oddly framed.
It gave me
nothing else.
It really
gave me the heebie-jeebies.
It gave me vibes of kindergarten teacher and stupidest 5-year-old.
Yes.
And especially towards the end. Let me just play. This is like the second half of it. It's not a very long video.
Right.
Listen, he's been in every fight to save America since I've known you for the last several years, and now he is all into the Senate race. And it is more important than ever that we stop this socialist, Marxist agenda that's trying to take over the country And I'll tell you what, the guy he's running against is one of the biggest instigators. We need to take him out. Herschel's the guy. He knows how to win.
He vote with Biden, I vote with the voters.
No, Herschel's for you. Vote for Herschel.
So that moment where Herschel gets those 6 words in a row right, kind of. He vote with Biden. She goes, well done, Herschel. You did it. Only 80 takes to get that right. Well done.
Brilliant. Well done.
So
We've had to shorten it so much.
Yeah. He barely talks. That's like he does that twice basically. He does two lines. The first one doesn't make any sense either because she's introducing him and he says, with a leader like this, pointing to her, who's in a different state, and I mean she's a leader in the sense she's a governor, but she's not his leader. With a leader like this, I know I'm going to win.
Who needs enemies?
Yeah,
right?
I mean that her being governor in a different state has absolutely no bearing on whether he wins in Georgia or not. It doesn't make any sense. But they could get him to remember that or read it off a teleprompter. So
because it's very short words. It reminds me of the relationship between Mickey Mouse and Goofy. It's that kind of, and then Mickey goes, oh yeah, you're a great guy.
So weird. So yeah, she's talking about the socialist Marxist agenda of the left, the Democrats, and that the guy that Herschel is running against is the main instigator of this. Now the guy he's running against is Reverend Raphael Warnock.
Right.
Who is not a communist.
No.
Especially given that Marx and communism generally anti-religion.
Yeah.
And he's a reverend. He was accused by Kelly Loeffler in their debate before the Senate runoffs in early 2021 of being a Marxist and of supporting Marx. Basically, she asked him, do you here and now denounce Marxism? She didn't do it with that much intonation in her voice because she's a fucking robot.
Exactly. Yeah.
She was her performance. Her
Yeah.
performance in the debate was weirdly automatic. It was very, very strange. But she asked him basically, "Do you denounce Marxism?" Which is weird because he hadn't kind of promoted it
announced
anyway.
It. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Is it true you're still beating your wife?
And he. Instead of just saying, yes, what a weird question, he talked about how he was in favour of the free market and capitalism and free enterprise and all of that stuff. So he directly contradicted any suggestion that he was a communist or a Marxist. But that was held up on the right as saying, well, he didn't say no. He didn't say he's not a Marxist.
Yes.
So
he just espoused all of the philosophical opposites of communism. You go, no, free market, individuality, make as much as you can at the expense of everyone else. And they go, well, yeah, but you didn't say no. That's part of the problem with people who say, well, you're just a communist, is that if you don't say, no, I'm not, whereas actually espousing all of the values that capitalism holds goes above the heads of the people that are saying you're just a communist, so much so that they say, well, he didn't say no. But he's just laid out the entirety of capitalism and wholeheartedly embraces that, and you still think he's a communist because he didn't say, no, I'm not a Marxist. I'm not going to denounce that, but I will embrace and fully endorse capitalism.
She called him a radical socialist again and again and again throughout the campaign, but especially during the debate. And part of what the Republicans pointed to as evidence of his Marxist socialist tendencies, he has said that the early church was a socialist church. And he points to the part in Acts where it talks about the apostles essentially forming a commune. And people who came along to the commune would sell their property and give their money to the apostles to be distributed among the people who needed it, which is absolutely true. Well, I say true. It's true that it's in the Bible.
In the Bible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's merely pointing that out, essentially. But they point to a single line in his book, The Divided Mind of the Black Church, where he says the Marxist critique has things that we as a kind of black church can learn from.
Yeah.
Now, I found the book and tracked down that passage and read it in context.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really heavy book. It's got I to understand most of that section, I would need a thesaurus and like quite a while to sit down and figure out what is going on, because it's very dense. It is in no way possible to point to that passage and say it endorses Marxism. If someone criticises us, there's things we can learn from that. That's not the same as saying they're right. We should do everything their way,
and we should do everything they say. Everything and all the associated stuff, and not what you're saying.
So it turns out that when you call someone a Marxist or a communist, either you're just lying or it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yes, exactly. Our usual thing. It's a lot more complicated than you're making it out. You're relying on people's preconceived ideas in order to sustain your argument, and so you haven't got to do any work. It's a shortcut for not doing any work.
And now is the time, I think, for Marx's British politics corner.
Speaking of shortcuts for not having to do any work, this is Boris Johnson, who, despite everything that Keir Starmer has done to try to de-socialist / unread the Labour Party and his move back to centrist New Labour managerial stance that kind of served Ed Miliband so well after 4 years of Cameron's Tories. Well, he didn't, because he didn't win the election. Here's Boris undoing all of that hard work in a calculatedly offhand smear during Prime Minister's questions in May 2022 to distract from his own incompetencies and also possibly the Tory party's Russian funding.
And he campaigned to put Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street, Mr. Speaker.
There it is. Let's just Stalinify, communistify the entire Starmer project, which is deliberately aimed to hurt Starmer because he's done his utmost to undo all that. Well, as we'll find out later, the Labour Party accused Corbyn of doing, even moving it far too far to the left, and it needs to be moved back to the centre. Let's get rid of all that. Let's dissociate ourselves from all the communistic stuff, because that's damaging and awful. And then Boris just does this offhand thing. Vladimir Corbyn, it's brilliant. It's brilliantly funny. Comes at the end of Starmer very accurate, factual skewering of Boris's not having done thing one in his entire premiership, and then he just relies on the age-old stuff of he actually campaigned for Vladimir Corbyn. The thing is that when Corbyn lost the election to Boris, Starmer became the leader. So he got rid of Corbyn was got rid of, and Starmer became the leader. And yes, it is true that way early on, 5 years prior to that, Starmer was on the side of the people that ultimately supported Corbyn through their support behind Corbyn, having prior to that thrown their support behind the leadership thing in the Labour Party, pretty much the same as the leadership of the Tory Party. There are several candidates that are put up, and people support them, and then in the next round, when they get insufficient votes, they throw their weight behind the remaining candidates, and that's what happened to Starmer. So it is true to say that he campaigned on behalf of, but only after like 2 or 3 rounds. That's who all was there, because he didn't want to support the other person, and nobody can remember who they were. So a second example, Tory MP Jonathan Gullis, who appeared on LBC Talk Radio on the 21st of June this year, talking about the strike action by the RMT rail workers, the union there that we've talked about before. Mick Lynch talking about how bad things are, and why the RMT are going on strike is because they haven't had a pay deal for 3 years. So this is the Tory MP who's wheeled out to talk about it and what the Tory take on it. And the presenter's question was about, well, why not pay the workers out of the rail company's enormous profits?
Mick Lynch needs to stop telling everyone that he doesn't want to talk to a Tory government. Rather than pushing his own party politics, I don't know, to get some red flags waving behind him and get some pats on the back.
Well, you're out of date on that one, because Mick Lynch actually wrote a letter to Grant Shapps last Thursday, I think, asking for a meeting.
Grant Shapps has sent a letter the day we had a debate in Parliament, which is not, ironic. It was of all days he decided to suddenly act on that. Yeah, it was telling broadcast media the week before that he would never talk with the Tory government. Mick Lynch is a Marxist who has no interest in anything other than trying to bring down the Conservative government because he wants to push his own political agenda. He's a waste of space and better off not in the trade union.
So the only qualification that Gullis has got is that he was once part of a trade union. He was a teacher, so he belonged to the National Union of Teachers. I think that's why they wheeled him out. But it's the same stuff. That thing about him being a Marxist was also levelled against Mick Lynch by journalists, in inverted commas, on Sky News, Kay Burley, who said, well, you're a Marxist, aren't you? And he, I don't. Then Mick Lynch just laughed in her face and said, well, I'm not. I'm just, we haven't had a pay rise, and all the money was to support the rail workers whilst the rail companies, whilst nobody was using the railway, went to the shareholders. And that's what the presenter's question hints at. And Gullis just goes, I love that bit. He wants some red flags waving behind him.
Yeah, I don't think you could have a pay rise under Marxism. I don't think, because...
Well, you wouldn't need one.
No, it's about dismantling the capitalist system, isn't it? The thing that separates Marxism from, like, social democracy or democratic socialism, whichever way you look at it, which is the only real form of socialism that is kind of espoused by actual politicians, is democratic socialism, is that Marxism, the argument is that to achieve that ideal, to achieve the best situation, you need to get rid of capitalism completely. You need to overthrow it. You can't do anything else because it's not possible to change it. Whereas democratic socialism says that you can reform capitalism. You can make you can use the current capitalist system and make it better and make it achieve those goals just through making changes to it. Which is exactly what someone's saying, pay us more money for the work we do, or, don't have such enormous profits that only go to shareholders and fat cat CEOs. That's democratic socialism. It's not Marxism.
Yes, that's entirely what Mick Lynch is about. He's going, no, I don't want to somebody, I think it was possibly Kay Burley, saying you want to dismantle the capitalist thing, she was just peddling the Tory party's briefing, and Mick Lynch is saying, no, I don't want to do that. I believe in tax. There should be taxes. It's fine that businesses are run to make money, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the workers who are making the money for the company. The company, and they say, well, if you take away the profits, then they won't invest. You go, it would be fine if they're investing, because the people they would be investing in are the workers that are doing the work to make the money for the shareholders. But they're not investing in the stuff. They're giving it away to the CEOs,
who are then storing it offshore to avoid taxes. And
that's where it's going. It's not going back into the infrastructure. It's not going back into wages for the workers, thereby retaining the workers and keeping them happy.
They're not even buying stuff with it and putting that money into the economy. Because they've already got enough money. They're already buying all the stuff they would normally buy. This is just extra money for them.
Yeah, they're just taking away and saving for the rainy day when the communists take over, and they will need all their assets. Yep. And by the way, Jonathan Gullis is the guy who, in October 2020, stated that the research by the National Maritime Museum and into the Royal Navy's links to slavery was left-wing ideological nonsense. Way to red bait the anti-slavers. No wonder the presenter said he was out of date, because that was 1700 and something. And Mick Lynch is a gift to the right-wing press. The Daily Express had a sidebar in the middle of an anti-Starmer freeze the energy price hike article, which has them rubbing their hands together with glee and making all sorts of implications in bold capitals. And this is the sidebar. It says, Corbyn ally Mick Lynch sides with, in capitals, Russia in blaming West for war on corrupt, in inverted commas, Ukraine. Union Baron Mick Lynch has sparked outrage after he appeared to in whose opinion, to side with Jeremy Corbyn on blaming the West for Russia's war against Ukraine. What did Mr. Lynch say about Russian invasion? Find out here. It's clickbait. It's pure clickbait. And, of course they would say that, wouldn't they? Because it's easy meat for the right to raise the boogeyman of the extreme left when talking about the non-right, shall we say. Anyone who isn't to the right is just communist, even if they're liberals. It gets a bit, as we say, it's a bit more complicated than that. And it's even more complicated when the left themselves start using red baiting amongst themselves. So, for example, the Labour leadership contest that we talked about in 2017 and 2020, Corbyn in 2017 faced a no confidence vote in his leadership. And Tom Watson, the deputy leader at the time, had already urged Corbyn to quit. And in the leadership campaign that followed, described as entryist Trotskyites, the tens of thousands of members that have signed up to be members of the Labour Party, me included, to be able to vote for Corbyn as the leader in 2015. And he said there are trots that have come back to the party, and they certainly don't have the best interests of the Labour Party at heart. They see the Labour Party as a vehicle for revolutionary socialism, and they're not remotely interested in winning elections, and that's a problem. Well, yeah, ordinary members like me who are interested in progressive politics as an alternative to new Labour centrist policies, which actually were also not good at winning elections, by the way, made sure that Corbyn won again. So he won the no confidence vote, and Corbyn appointed Owen Smith, Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, in 2017, but then sacked Smith in 2018 because Smith proposed a second EU referendum vis-à-vis Brexit. And Labour former Cabinet Minister Lord Hayne accused Corbyn of a terrible Stalinist purge for sacking Smith. And then, after the general election of 2019 that brought in Boris's Tories back to power, Corbyn stood down as leader. And in the leadership contest that followed in 2020, more red baiting ensued. Journalist and New Statesman columnist Paul Mason tweeted about the candidates Lisa Nandy, Rebecca Long-Bailey and Keir Starmer. And he says, the right are backing Nandy, the Stalinists who destroyed Corbynism are backing Rebecca Long-Bailey, and it's a no-brainer for anti-capitalists to vote #Keir for leader.
Wait, why did the Stalinists destroy Corbynism?
Well, exactly.
Weren't the Stalinists voting for Corbyn?
Yeah, and wasn't Corbyn being a Stalinist?
Yeah, according to them, surely.
Well, exactly. This is why it's far more complicated on the left. And yes, quite. And then as leader, Starmer then began removing the left wing from the party in an attempt to make them more electable. And this got red-baited as well by Owen Jones. His tweet in July 2021, he says, Keir Starmer promised no more navel-gazing, but instead of fighting the Tories, Labour is now beginning a Stalinist-style purge. All the people who portrayed Corbynism as scary authoritarianism will be the most loudly demanding even bigger purges. And you think, yeah, there's the irony that Corbyn was a Stalinist authoritarianist by getting rid of the likes of Owen Smith, and now there's a Stalinist purge to get rid of those people.
Have you got any sense of what these people who are talking about Stalinist-style purges, is that just a way of saying they sacked people? Like if a politician who did not have the loyalty of members of their party or disagreed with someone got rid of them. That's a Stalinist purge, because Trump is extremely Stalinist, if that's the case.
Yes, exactly, in that regard, yes.
It's almost like politicians like being surrounded by people who think the same way as them about stuff.
It's odd, isn't it? That kind of, rather than just going, well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. What we should do is try and be a broad church that reflects what actually goes on amongst real people, and try to represent some of that breadth of opinion.
Way too complicated and difficult.
No, we just want to be black and white, red and blue. That's all we want. So, and in September the same year, at the Labour Party conference, Labour Party members found that they couldn't attend the conference because their membership had been revoked after their sympathies for the left-wing movements within the party were deemed incompatible with membership of the party. And the former Shadow Chancellor under Corbyn, John McDonnell, said, "This is insane. Joe Stalin would be over the moon about the way we're behaving at the moment." And most recently, Sam Tarry, Labour MP for Ilford South, joined the picket line of the striking RMT rail workers in July 2022 and was sacked from the Labour Party as a result. And Matt Zarb-Cousin's tweet brings us full circle with a callback to Corbyn's purge of Owen Smith and Borison's red-baiting name invention when he tweets, "More Stalinist purges from the court of Keith Stalin." So Keir Starmer, for some reason, is called Keith.
Keith, yeah. What the fuck's that about?
It's a private eye joke.
Communist called Keith? Oh.
No, it's just because it's just a dull name.
Okay.
Like Keith. So, but to call him Keith Stalin.
Keith Stalin.
You can call the left communists all you like, but the left will outshine you
in calling each other communists.
Calling each other various variations on communism. Yeah.
I see the black door and I want it to be red. No Tories anymore before we end up dead. I see the socialists dressed in their Starmer clothes. I have to turn my head until my darkness goes. I foresee voting day and hope they're turning red. Equality, fair pay, the things that should be said. I see the media turn their heads and look away, blaming on the immigrants and hope it goes away. No more will that black door be opened by a child. Their stupid fallacies be set free in the wild. I see the socialists dressed in their Starmer clothes. I have to turn my head until my darkness goes.
There are the Rolling Stones with Bait It Red. No, Paint It Black.
Yeah, due to a woefully inadequate musical education as a child, my first encounter of that song was as the theme tune to the excellent Vietnam War TV show Tour of Duty.
Oh, nice.
Very, very good. And obviously once I heard it, that's a fucking brilliant song.
Yeah. And nice. And a nice use of that. That was it's a very Apocalypse Now kind of use of the Doors kind of thing. Yeah, it's angst-ridden enough. Cool.
And leads in nicely to our first example
in
the Fallacy of the Wild, where we like to talk about the Fallacy of the Week from a non-political perspective, because our first example comes from MASH, the Vietnam-era show
the Vietnam War,
that was set in Korea. This is actually an episode that we featured before, because this is the episode where an airman thought he was Jesus Christ, and they call in Colonel Flagg, the CIA military officer, to kind of question him. And Margaret and Frank have some thoughts about this guy.
What do you make of this mystery man who claims to be Christ, Colonel? Just your typical Joe trying to get out of doing his duty?
I bet Commie I say his parents weren't even born in this country.
Korea?
No, I meant our country.
I bet commie.
Yeah. So that's Frank's just kind of go-to. Yeah, he's probably a communist.
Probably a communist. Yeah, that'll be it. It's not kind of just doing it out of any sort of mental health problem, or even that not unreasonable thought of Hot Lips, when she says maybe he's just trying to shirk his duty because, we know about Klinger, so, who's desperately trying to get out of not having to do anything, and nobody's listening to him. But no, none of those. He's a commie.
And that's where Frank's idea goes straight away. And another episode of MASH where Colonel Flagg shows up. He is just accusing basically everyone of being communist. And I think even Frank has a copy of Reader's Digest. And Colonel Flagg goes, yeah, but if you take out the A and the E and the R, it's Red's Digest. So, yeah. No one can get away with it.
There you go. No one can deny that. Yes, exactly.
So our second example comes from an episode of Seinfeld where Jerry goes to visit his parents.
So nice of you to come down here on your father's birthday. You've helped take his mind off the condo election.
Oh, right. You can't run for condo president because you were impeached at the other condo.
I was never impeached. I resigned.
Even so, the press would bury him.
What press?
The condo newsletter, the Boca Breeze.
Pinko Commie Rag.
Brilliant. It's so Trump, isn't it?
So yeah, it's a great way of dismissing media that you disagree with as being politically motivated because they say bad things about you.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And what it does is betray Seinfeld's dad's political leanings. That he immediately goes to Pinko Commie Rag rather than right-wing,
fascist,
Nazi, newsletter. Fascist newsletter. Yeah.
So our third example comes from the always excellent Field of Dreams.
Oh, yeah.
This is a scene where a woman is standing up in a school board meeting and trying to get a book banned by a progressive 60s author.
That book you're waving about is hardly smut. It is considered by many critics to be the classic novel about the 1960s.
It's pornography.
No. The Supreme Court says it's not. And its author, Mr. Mann,
is sick.
Terrence Mann is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he is widely regarded as the finest satirist of his time.
Yeah, well, I think he's a pervert. He's probably a communist, too.
It's just kind of thrown in for good measure.
Yeah. He's a point fight, and probably a communist. So this section of the podcast is where we go. These are non-political ones, but they're all so salient, aren't they? You just think, I was never impeached. I resigned, and the book banning thing.
Yeah.
No, in my downstairs bathroom here in my house in France, there's a big poster of Ginsberg's Howl. It was hailed as a literary masterpiece, but it was also vilified as I think they stopped short of communist. It's a long-form poem, and they said it's not suitable for children because it was made by these communists. So it's this kind of these left-wing socialist writers who were reflecting the mores of young people at the time. And then people just stand up and go, he's a pervert, because it's stuff I don't understand. I don't like it because I can't read. There are long words. It's not suitable for children. Not all poetry is for children. Just because stuff rhymes doesn't mean it. The last time you encountered a poem was probably in kindergarten. That's what you're equating it to because you've not studied Ted Hughes' The Wastelands. It's not written for children. It's a poem, but it's beyond your ken. So that the whole bit, they reduce it to he's a pervert and probably a communist, and therefore they dismissed him entirely.
Yeah, and it would have been far too long a clip to include, but this scene continues with Annie, Kevin Costner's character's wife, standing up and arguing with this woman and telling her that this novel by Terence Mann was important to her growing up during that time and feeling isolated and lost and not fitting in with society and all of this kind of stuff, and that Terence Mann was a voice of gentle reason and all of this stuff. And then she whips the crowd, the collected school board, the parents, into this kind of political frenzy, where she's started talking about, how I thought this was America kind of thing, and do we want to start banning books and have the kind of censorship that they had under Stalin?
Yeah. So she invokes it on the pro
and then everyone's
side.
like, yeah, USA.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
There you go. So yes, both sides of the argument can invoke communism. Yeah. Well, speaking as the gentle voice of reason, my example, which I came across as I was looking at James O'Brien on LBC Talk Radio, who is the kind of, well, I think he's been dismissed as communist several times by Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Undoubtedly, yeah.
He's the left-wing commentator on the stupidity of Brexit.
I'd say he's a critical thinking advocate.
Yes, absolutely.
He holds politicians' feet to the fire, and he, when people call up to espouse a particular view, he asks them for evidence and detail and reason, rather than just kind of arguing back with
why they
the
reached
opposite.
that conclusion. Yeah. He also does a podcast where he invites people on, and it's called Full Disclosure, and they talk about things that are dear to their heart. And he had Professor Brian Cox, who's called Professor Brian Cox to distinguish him from Brian Cox, the actor. So he's Professor Brian Cox. And he's also
not the guy from Succession.
Exactly. He's also ex-keyboard player for D-Ream, whose 90s hit "Things Can Only Get Better" was used by Brett Blair's Labour Party in their campaigns. So he's not quite non-political. But Brian Cox, I liked it because I came across it and it seemed to fit nicely. It's sort of red baiting adjacent, but it's very interesting to listen to. He talks about a lecture given by physicist Robert Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, in his Reith lectures, this is the transferable skills thing. So he said, imagine, you think about an electron, sometimes a single particle, but actually also we understand we have to think about it in some cases as an extended wavy thing that fills the space that it's in. The truth is that it's neither of those. It's a very complex kind of behavior that this thing has. And these are two good analogies. They look like ideas that are completely at right angles to each other, that you have to mutually contradictory, but you have to hold them both in your head. And nature forces you to hold those two things in your head simultaneously in order to get a full picture of the system or a better picture of the physical system. So Oppenheimer said, and so it is with politics. You've got to understand that human beings have individual needs, that they go to work and they want to keep as much of their money as they can or whatever it is. They have an individual life. But also human beings have a social life, a community exists. And so they look like they're pulling in different directions. Oppenheimer says you could call them capitalism and communism, right? Because he was talking in the 50s,
Sure.
right? So, and McCarthy was pursuing him at the time.
Yeah.
So, but of course, neither's the right way to do it because it's complicated. It's like an electron. If you gave that lecture to all the people who are in our government now and said, as part here, let's just try and understand a bit of quantum mechanics. And then you can understand that idea. And now we'll move that idea over to politics because it's applicable. And that's what Oppenheimer was doing.
So Oppenheimer was pursued under the ultimate red-baiting McCarthy House Committee on Un-American Activities in the 50s. And several of Oppenheimer's colleagues were called Fifth Amendment communists when they exercised their Fifth Amendment right. So they refused to incriminate themselves by saying stuff, so they invoked the Fifth Amendment. But that didn't clear them, and McCarthy red-baited them by calling them Fifth Amendment communists, even though they hadn't produced any verbal evidence to support his assertion that they were communists. by just being silent, he found them guilty of communism.
It comes to something, though, when someone wants to explain politics by first getting people to understand quantum mechanics.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So we're gonna play
Fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game.
I understand the game as well as anybody. As well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for Fake News, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
Well, before we go on, between you and I, listener, forget Jim's here for a moment. You see, what's going on is I've discovered that this is a Maoist, Leninist, Chavez-esque, Castroist plot to make numbers mean something different to what we as the working class know and understand what them to mean. Basically, what they're trying to do, they're trying to seize the means of production against us. They're just Leninist socialists. So anything that goes on from now on, and we get to the score at the end, just be aware that this is a conspiracy.
See, I think you're just trying to get points redistributed to you.
I am. Yeah, I'm trying to steal them. Not steal them. What am I saying? I'm trying legitimately...
To overthrow the system of fake news.
Overthrow the system. Legitimately redistribute the wealth that's stacked up against the ultimate score that's only been distributed meanly by the owners of the means of production. Yeah.
Yeah, you're fooling yourself. We're an anarcho-syndicalist game, this is.
Yeah. So,
these quotes are from Trump's speech at CPAC last week.
Yes.
To be honest, in previous years, we've talked about what went on at CPAC. But fuck me, there's such a lot of news and stuff at the moment. It's practically completely passed us by.
It's like the circus has visited in the town next door. And you're going, there's strange things going on over there. But what the hell? This town's on fire. Yes.
But they didn't have any stages shaped like literal Nazi runes this time. Yeah. So, yay. Well done, CPAC.
Well done, yeah.
But they did have Trump.
Maybe.
So, not all good. Trump talked for almost 2 hours.
Did he say anything of any consequence?
He stuck to a script some of the time, but frequently got distracted by things, by anything shiny.
Yeah.
And spent quite a significant amount of time at the beginning just introducing people who were there and saying how great they were, which was, for him, probably quite hard, because none of them were him.
Yes.
So
was that scripted or wow?
I think it was, all the names were scripted and then he made stuff up about them. So that's where our first statement comes from.
Okay.
He was introducing Ronnie Jackson, his former doctor. He said, "Where's Ronnie? He was the White House doctor. He was a great doctor. He was an admiral, a doctor, and now he's a congressman." I said, "Which is the best if you had your choice?" And he sort of indicated doctor, because he loved looking at my body. It was so strong and powerful. But he said, "I'm the healthiest president that's ever lived. I was the healthiest." I said, "I like this guy. I don't know who the hell he is at the time."
What? Okay. What? Okie dokie. All right.
Statement number 2. He said, the contrast between the Trump administration's amazing success and the Biden administration's breathtaking failure could not be more stark.
Wow.
Let's look at the facts. I got gasoline for cars, put it in the tank, thank you very much. $1.87 a gallon I got it down to.
Yeah.
They have it now at $5, $6, $7. A friend of mine from California called me this morning. He just paid $8.55, he told me. California. And you'll follow. It's not even believable.
Okay. Okay, all right.
And then it got quite dark.
Oh, right.
He said, the Republican Party are the only ones who can fix the carnage and devastation that is going on right now in American cities. Right. Democrat-run cities. They're all Democrats. They just don't know what to do about it, and frankly, they don't care. So the blood of hard-working Americans runs through the streets while murderers and rapists walk free because Joe Biden and crazy Nancy Pelosi refuse to do anything to stop it. In fact, they encourage it.
Brilliant. Who would have thought that Joe Biden's administration would be the ones to bring about the purge? Right. Yeah. Okay. Blood of hard-working Americans. That's such a good, a good rousing thing. Okay, so... I've got to pick a fake one, right? Okay, okay, they're all just perfectly believable. Okay, well, I'm quite impressed by the numbers in the 187 a gallon. Yeah, and the you'll follow, it's not even believable. Is that a thing that Jim would come up with? And then the blood of hard-working Americans runs through the streets. So and yet also he loved looking at my body. It was so strong and powerful. I just want to hear him say that. But is that a thing that Jim would write? Okay. Okay, so it went on balance then. I think that... okay, it's a toss-up between number 3 and number 1. I think that... I think number 1 is the one that you made up.
So of the other two, which are you more convinced?
More convinced by... What about convinced? Very strong term. More convinced by the number 2, the gasoline 187 567.
And number 2?
Yeah.
Is real.
The contrast between the Trump administration's amazing success and the Biden administration's breathtaking failure could not be more stark. Let's look at the facts. I got gasoline for cars. Put it in the tank. Thank you very much. $1.87 a gallon. I got it down to... They have it now at $5, $6, $7. A friend of mine from California called me this morning. He just paid $8.55, he told me, California. And you'll follow. It's not even believable.
What does that mean? That's kind of like, it's like a lyric from an Eagles song, isn't it? And you'll follow. It's not even believable.
I mean, it isn't even believable. Because it isn't true.
Because it's not true. None of it is true. He didn't get it down. There's nothing
he doesn't have a friend.
No. Yeah, nobody calls him. Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend. I had to call him this morning. Well, I call him a friend, but I just call him. Yeah.
So he has previously claimed that gas was $1.87 a gallon when he left office.
Right.
Which it wasn't. It was in the $2.40 range.
Right.
On average, this is across the US. Mm-hmm. It did get down as low as $1.87 a gallon in about April of 2020.
Right.
During lockdown, when literally no one was driving anywhere at all, ever.
Yeah.
And obviously, presidents don't affect the gas prices.
No.
It's to do with crude oil, and there's lots of different factors. With the caveat that his bad handling of COVID, in part, did actually have an impact on that. And maybe it's a post hoc fallacy, but the crude oil prices did come down, and gas prices, both in the US and the UK, I expect other places, continue to go up. At one point, I think 50 days ago, Joe Biden sent out a tweet, I think it was, saying... Look, oil companies, bring your prices down because crude oil has come down and you're bilking the American consumer now.
Yeah.
And like the next day, gas prices started to come down, and they have come down every single day since.
Yeah.
So maybe presidents have some impact on gas prices.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't 187. Oh, well, it was 187. He had nothing to do with it. It was the pandemic.
Yeah.
It isn't now $8.55 in California.
Right.
There are websites that track this stuff.
Yeah.
Current average price for gas in California is under $6.
Oh, nowhere near. Wow.
The maximum you can find gas in California is in the 630, 640 range.
You must have bought it from Trump Gas.
Yeah.
If, he just paid $8.55. Well, you must have gone to a Trump gas station.
Or maybe he just got $8.55 worth of gas. He didn't necessarily. It wasn't $8.55 a gallon.
No, he drives a 50cc kind of motorcycle. Yeah, because that's what you do in California. Because you haven't got to go far. Yeah. It's like, I just spent $8.55 in my petrol-powered bicycle. Yeah, because you can get those in California, can't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a push cycle.
But yeah, I think it's under $4 average in the US at the moment.
Wow.
So it's come down dramatically. In the UK, incidentally, just so you know, the equivalent is around $7.68 a gallon at the moment, average.
Jeez.
And it hit $8.50 before it started to come down.
Wow. If only we had a president as diligent as Biden, who would just go, "Oi, crude oil's down. What are you doing, you money-making bastards?" Yeah.
So you also think the number 3 is real?
I do.
And number 3 is fake news.
No, man. Yes, blood of hard-working Americans run through the streets. I should have it was a toss-up between that or he loved looking at my body.
Yeah. To be honest, although I did make that up, I don't think it's actually as strong as what he did say in this kind of here's what he actually said. He said, "The streets of our Democrat-run cities are drenched with the blood of innocent victims. Nice. Gun battles rage between bloodthirsty street gangs. Bullets tear into crowds at random, killing wonderful, beautiful little children that never had a chance. Wow. Carjackers lay in wait like predators hunting their prey." So I toned it down a lot because I thought that was more believable.
Way too much. Yeah, I would easily spot that. Yeah. Oh my God, that is the pitch for the Purge 2022, isn't it? Wow. Read it again. What was it? Tear into the innocent bodies.
Yeah, but bullets tear into crowds at random, killing wonderful, beautiful little children that never even had a chance.
So good, isn't it? Oh my God! Wow.
So,
none of it's true, obviously.
No, of course not. No.
But it's it doesn't matter. It's that kind of. Oh my God! That's so. Yeah.
Be afraid. Be very afraid for us.
It's also got echoes of Enoch Powell, isn't it?
The
blood of hard-working Americans.
Yeah.
No.
So that means that number 1.
Damn you.
Was a real thing that he really said.
He loved looking at my body. Oh, no, it's a real thing.
Where's Ronnie? He was the White House doctor. He was a great doctor, He was an admiral, a doctor, and now he's a congressman. I said, which is the best if you had your choice? And he sort of indicated doctor because he loved looking at my body. It was so strong, powerful. But he said, I'm the healthiest president that's ever lived. I was the healthiest. I said, I like this guy. I don't know who the hell he is at the time.
What? Because he loved looking at my body. It was so strong and powerful.
Just creepy.
It's awful. Oh, my God. Which is the best? Of being an admiral, a doctor, and a congressman? Which is the best?
A doctor, well, specifically because I got to look at your body.
I got to look at your strong, powerful body. It was, you're the healthiest president that's ever lived. Really? Really? Healthier than Obama? Really?
He literally said, if it wasn't for all the junk food, he could live to 200.
So you're not healthy then?
No, because
you're eating junk food.
No, despite the junk food, he's still going to live like longer than the average mortal. But if it wasn't, it would be supernatural how good he is.
He'd live
if
to
he
200.
just ate a tomato every now and again isn't in a Whopper.
Yeah, I actually had a cucumber, a small cucumber that wasn't pickled. Yeah, it's just fresh out of the garden. Oh, my God. Yeah. No, that's horrible, isn't it? The reason
that is awful. That is much more disturbing than the streets running with the blood of innocent children.
Exactly. Yeah. The reason he chose, well, of all the careers I've had, actually, my favourite was being a doctor, but specifically because I got to see your body.
I mean, the thing is, it's disturbing on so many levels.
Ghastly.
Because imagine if you weren't talking about a hideous specimen like Trump. Saying that you like being a doctor because you get to look at anyone's body that's not okay.
Not right. That's the kind of stuff that gets you struck off from the medical profession. Yeah. You get thrown out because you're not upholding the Hippocratic Oath.
Thank God it isn't at all true.
Thank the Lord. Yes. Yeah. For Ronnie's sake, if nobody else's. Oh, Jesus Christ.
So unfortunately, you did not get that correct, which means that
means that the pinko communist conspiracy continues.
Yeah, and I think you're on an unbroken losing streak,
bit of a downward,
like we've never seen.
Downward spiral, like the like of which we've never seen.
And it means you can't make it to 50 out of 100 now.
No, I'm so sorry, comrades.
So
I can't. Oh,
have to go for 75 out of 150. We are sponsored this week by the Can We Please Talk podcast, which is an excellent show.
It's like a straight version of what we do. I was struck by that when I started listening to
There's definitely a crossover. I really think, I think if you enjoy the Is Not a Logical Fallacy bit of what we do, where we kind of just talk about what's going on in politics. But yeah, that essentially is what they do. It's largely about politics, not exclusively. They talk about general news, also business, sports, education, things like that. But they talk about it in a very balanced way. And they also have really interesting guests on. One I listened to recently had the New York Times political reporter Maya King. She was really good, talking about young people feeling disenfranchised by politics.
What they're about is getting somebody on who really knows their stuff and then asking them questions that they will be able to provide illuminating answers to.
Journalists, politicians, analysts, historians, all kinds of people who really know what they're talking about and who they interview in a really interesting way.
They just look in depth into one or two issues and say, okay, what's really going on? What can we learn from this? Where are the nuances? It's not black and white stuff. They're quite endearing presenters because they talk about how they feel about stuff. Just go, I'm a little bit worried about what this means. And that your heart goes out to them. You go, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I'm with you, brother.
We're often very worried about the stuff that we talk about, So if you think that sounds like a good show, and you should, because it is, you can find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically all of the places you would normally go to get a show, for example, like this one.
Can We Please Talk? Go check them out.
So it's time for the part of the show that this week at least is called A Raid on Mar-a-Lago is Not a Logical Fallacy. Because as we published our episode last time, the FBI was they weren't raiding Mar-a-Lago. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's how all of the news organisations were talking about it. But it was they executed a search warrant. That's what they did. They knocked on the door, said, we have a search warrant here that says we can come in and search for stuff.
And look for stuff we think you might have.
Yeah, they'd already talked to the Secret Service about it and said, look, we're going to be coming by, we've got some guns, you've got some guns, let's not shoot each other. Yeah. It was kind of prearranged, they knew it was happening. They came with a search warrant signed by a judge and collected some stuff. But to hear the news talk about it, they were like, it was like a SWAT team abseiling down the side of Mar-a-Lago and smashing in through the windows with
helicopters
fixed bayonets.
Strafing the gardens. Well, the last time we kind of encountered something like this, it was the Moving the Goalposts episode where we talked about the way in which the way they characterised what had gone on had changed day by day.
Yeah, it was the Stormy Daniels payments, I think we talked about for moving the goalposts, wasn't it? Because their story changed, and to some extent, what we've got here is a mixture of moving the goalposts with kettle logic, because sometimes they are just at the same time saying contradictory excuses. They're not even waiting for those excuses to be debunked and then moving on to another one.
Yeah, they're just going, so this and then that, and you go, wait a minute, that's just the opposite of what you just said. Yeah.
So Trump, his team, his family, Fox News are back on his side now. They're in his corner
for a bit. Yeah, because it suits their agenda to badmouth the FBI.
They've been coming out with a large number of very different, shifting, contradictory, mutually exclusive, and confusing arguments. So basically,
excuses. Is not too strong a word.
I mean, it might be too strong. I don't even think you could necessarily call them excuses.
Because it's got to excuse something. It's just nonsensical, but it's kind of like all of the brainstorming that you would have. You go, okay, how do the kind of stuff that led people to resign during the COVID crisis in the UK. They're just brainstorming stuff, going, what if we typified it as a cheese and wine party, or what if we typified it as, okay, we got this stuff because we're allowed to. So I'm in my head. They've got those kind of giant post-it notes that are kind of on a flip chart. You could tear it off and stick it to the wall. So they've got 3 or 4 of those things, 4 or 5 of those things, 6 or 7 of those things, and then they just trot them all out instead of going, well, that one's obviously not going to fly, so forget that. They haven't done any of that. So I think the press office in Trump Towers, they've just gone, chuck them all out. It'll be fine. Nobody will know.
So it started with Trump informing everyone that that Mar-a-Lago had been raided, essentially. Because the DOJ didn't mention it, the FBI didn't mention it. It was Trump going, the FBI have just come and taken stuff, broken into my safe. And so at first, because it's Trump, we didn't know which of the many laws he's broken that they were
applied to. They were
executing a search warrant on.
We had to do a bit of matching.
Well, the information that we had at the time was coming all from Trump world, because the DOJ were not releasing the search warrant and the information around it. They weren't talking about it publicly. But Christina Bobb, one of Trump's remaining lawyers, she signed the thing, and so she had, because when you are served with a search warrant, you get to keep the thing. You don't get to see the affidavit, which was the set of circumstances that led to the search warrant being issued.
Right.
So what needs to be done for a search warrant like this to be issued is that they need to gather evidence which gives them probable cause to assume that in a location or on the person of someone, if they search, there will be evidence of a specific crime that they believe they have probable cause to believe happened, and that they have reason to assume that there might be evidence in this location or on this person's body or clothing or whatever. A judge will look at that and go, I agree that the amount of evidence you have provided me with, be it testimony or circumstantial evidence or whatever, is sufficient to give me enough of a reason to believe that it's worth you being able to search this person.
Right.
Or this property or whatever.
So here's the warrant to do that. Yeah.
And so the search warrant that they were provided with would have, as we've seen it since, because it's been released now, would detail the crimes that they are looking for evidence to support, and and therefore those are crimes which there is already probable cause to believe this person may have committed.
Right.
Probable cause is a lower test, a lower test than reasonable doubt, which you would need to get a conviction.
Right.
So probable cause just means that there's, I've heard it said somewhere between 30 and 50% chance that this is a real thing that this person did.
Right. Right.
It's a higher level than articulable suspicion, which is what a policeman needs to pull someone over, frisk them, that kind of thing. They have to be able to put into words the reason why they suspect someone might have a reason to be searched.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere in that hierarchy of levels of evidence you need to
So
be
it
able
would
to
lead
get
you
that.
to bring about a conviction.
Yeah.
Take something.
Well, at least, yeah. It's the beginning of that process. It's a reason, and what it means is they had enough evidence to convince a judge that there is at least some likelihood that these crimes have been committed, and there would be evidence there that they could find that would prove those crimes.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't know what those crimes were,
Right.
what the evidence might be, or what the evidence that was being seized was. But the stuff that Christina Bobb was talking about to Breitbart and to Fox News and to people like that, she was saying, "Oh, it's all this presidential records stuff. It's like that stuff. The 15 boxes of material that Trump took from the White House.
Yeah.
That the National Archives went, hang on a minute, that's our stuff. That's not your stuff.
Yeah.
Back in May, I want to say.
Right.
And then they got back. She was like, "Oh, it's just stuff. It's that kind of thing. It's not a big deal. Presidential Records Act, not that big a problem. They're just, overblowing their case about this."
Right.
Now, the Presidential Records Act is kind of a big thing, depending on which records have been taken. I mean, it's against the rules to take the records away at all, whatever they are.
Take anything out of the White
Yeah,
House.
but it's also against the rules to rip them up and put them down the toilet, or burn them, or eat them, or any of the stuff that we know that Trump was doing throughout his presidency.
Yeah.
And to some extent, the only time that would get prosecuted or cause a real problem is depending on what kind of records they were.
Right.
But realistically, if they were more serious or worrying records, like national secrets kind of things, there are other laws that cover those, so it probably wouldn't be prosecuted under the Presidential Records Act.
Right.
So it's not really a law that has significant teeth, and it's not one of the ones that was cited in the eventually released search warrant.
Ah, right. Okay.
So at first, all we knew was her saying, Presidential Records Act, not a big deal, don't worry about it, this is fine. And that was what the right wing were running with. And to some extent, what all of the press was running with, because it was all the information they had at the time.
At the time, yeah.
And so people on Fox were saying, "Oh, this is outrageous mistreatment. If they can do this to a former president, they can do it to you."
They do to you, yeah. Because all of you are former presidents.
Absolutely. All of you have national secrets in the basement.
Yeah, that you've just got 15 boxes of which you've taken from the White House. Yeah. So imagine if they could do that to him. Jesus Christ, they're going to come after you.
And at this point, Dana Perino on Fox said something to the effect of, "It's not like he's got nuclear secrets. It's not like he's got nuclear codes."
That's very specific.
That if it's anything less than that, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the next day, it came out that that some nuclear secrets or nuclear documents were included in
exactly the thing that he said. It's not like he's got. He had.
Yeah. Following which, Will Kane on Fox said, to justify this, it's going to have to be something a lot more egregious than the nuclear codes.
Yeah.
That's not that big a deal.
No.
Having
what the hell?
nuclear stuff.
It could be the price of butter in Ukraine. The deal with North Korea vis-a-vis widescreen TVs. No, much more terrible things than the fucking nuclear codes. Yeah.
So we don't. To be fair, we don't know if it was the nuclear codes. If Washington Post reporting is to be believed, there is nuclear information included in the documents that were collected by the FBI.
Right.
So at this point, all of the right wing their narrative was release the warrant, tell us the information, which Trump's people had the ability to release.
Yeah.
But weren't releasing.
They would have got
the
mimeograph of.
Yeah.
So they write it through, they tear it off and go, "Here's your copy of the ticket." Yeah.
But that was what they were focused on, was, prove to us that you're not just doing this for political gain, release the information.
Release the warrant. The warrant. Yeah.
So the DOJ then went, all right,
here it is.
We'll release the warrant.
Yeah.
And they went, No, not like that. No.
No. No. Yeah.
So then, once the DOJ petitioned the court to say, all right, can we unseal this and release it? Again, not including the affidavit of evidence that led to the warrant being issued.
Yeah.
Trump's team then released it to Breitbart, because all they could do after saying, release it, once the DOJ went, yeah, all right, we're going to release it.
There you go.
They could either say,
stand on.
don't release it, stop releasing it.
Yeah. Stop the... yes.
Or they could get out ahead of it and put it out.
Stop the vote. And keep the count going. Yeah, yes. Those contrary things, which are particularly kind of attractive because they are 3-word things, are they? Release the warrant. Suppress the warrant. Give us the warrant. Don't give us the warrant. Yeah.
Meanwhile, they were working on other arguments. Trump was saying Obama took 30 million documents after his presidency. He took 30 million documents to Chicago, and
you think I'm bad?
Were any of
the other guy?
Were any of those nuclear documents? Could be.
These questions should be asked.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I mean,
is it the mild-mannered janitor who is Hong Kong food? Could be.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I mean, it hardly needs saying, but that's not true, obviously.
No. And I suspect that the people who keep all that stuff in the museum would just kind of go, yeah, what? No, none of those are missing. We've got all those. We have all those. That's fine. Yeah.
So the thing is,
freely available for anyone to look at, because that's the nature of our organisation. We make this stuff available, and that's our beef with Trump, that he took this stuff away.
No, absolutely.
We haven't got it.
It was NARA. It was the National Archives and Records Administration.
There you go.
Who moved those 30 million documents, or whatever, however many it was, to a location, a NARA-operated facility in Chicago, or in the Chicago area.
Yeah.
And they were, first of all, not classified documents. We'll get into that later, because it kind of... They're claiming these weren't classified, and that doesn't really matter. But the Obama ones definitely weren't classified, or any of Obama's classified documents were stored in a separate, secure NARA facility in Washington, D.C.
Right.
But the ones that were sent to the Chicago area, first of all, a lot of it was electronic stuff, because by the time Obama came in, a lot of presidential record keeping had already moved to digital stuff.
Right.
There was apparently somewhat less of that during Trump's presidency, partly because Trump doesn't use a computer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of paper stuff. He would have stuff printed out for him. Like if he saw a tweet he liked, he would get them to print it for him and stuff like that.
Wow.
For Obama, 95% apparently of all of the documents that were disseminated around the Obama administration, and therefore were needed to be kept by the Presidential Records Act, by NARA, were born digital. So they started off online. They didn't have a hard copy version. So the only communication between the Obama Presidential Center and the Obama Presidential Library with NARA was a request to digitize some of those hard copy documents that did exist.
Yeah.
But again, they stayed with NARA in the sole custody of NARA in Chicago. So Obama did not take documents to Chicago. That's just not true.
Yeah.
Other people were saying, it wasn't that big a deal, according to the FBI, when Hillary stole documents, or whatever it was she did, which she didn't. She
incidentally.
She had a private email server which she mostly used for private stuff. There were 113 emails that were found on those in threads, essentially, of reply threads that contained classified information but weren't marked as classified on that server. And the FBI didn't think it wasn't that big a deal. They investigated it thoroughly, found all of the stuff that was potentially classified information, and said, you didn't do that very well, but didn't actually press charges because they found it to be kind of accidental rather than deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff, by contrast,
appears
to be material that was taken by Trump and Trump-adjacent people at the end of his presidency that is largely the same kind of stuff as the 15 boxes that were given back to NARA earlier in the year, and when they were asked for it at the time, they gave those 15 boxes back, but not the other 20 or so that he kept in the basement at his oceanfront golf course.
Oh.
Essentially.
Okay.
So he was asked for it, and he just didn't give them it. So that's why they got a subpoena and a search warrant, and
there you go. Yeah.
And came and got them, essentially.
Yeah.
The laws that are cited on the search warrant, as it turns out, are 18 USC 1519, which is essentially an obstruction of justice law that is about, it's a crime to alter, conceal, destroy or falsify a record, document or tangible object to impede or influence a federal investigation or other process. So the argument there, I guess, would be that maybe some of these documents pertain to January 6th or to something that he otherwise needed to cover up for some other investigation that he might be under. And so concealing these documents, withholding them, it becomes, breaks that law potentially.
Yeah.
There's a very similar law, which is another one that was mentioned on the search warrant, 18 USC 2071, which applies to efforts to willfully or unlawfully conceal, mutilate or destroy any record, proceeding, map, book, paper document, that thing, filed with or deposited with any clerk or officer of any court of the United States or in any public office. And basically it's kind of quite a broad act prohibiting just concealing and destroying public documents that aren't yours, that should be that are covered by things like the Presidential Record Act. The main one that is getting the press is 18 USC 793, because that is the Espionage Act.
Right.
And the Espionage Act is similarly quite broad. There are sections which cover giving national secrets to foreign governments and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not clear whether that's what they're claiming. But one section which seems to be fairly clear that he has violated is the section that says whoever having unauthorized possession of, access to, or control of any document, writing, code book, signal book, sketch, photograph, photographic negative, etc., lots of things, relating to national defence or information relating to national defence, which information the possessor has reason to believe could be used to the injury of the United States or the advantage of any foreign nation, willfully communicates, delivers, transmits, or causes to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted, or attempts to communicate, deliver, transmit, or cause to be communicated, delivered, or transmitted to any person not entitled to receive it, or willfully retains the same and fails to deliver it to the officer or employee of the United States entitled to receive it. So that last bit, if there is any document in this thing which, classified or not, could potentially be harmful to the US if it's given to a foreign nation, if you keep it and don't give it to them, NRA, when they ask for it, which they did, you've broken that law.
Yeah.
And that isn't an intent law. You don't have to be doing it for a particular reason like the others, where you have to prove that you were trying to impede an investigation or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is just the plain facts of the law are broken if there is any document in there which could be national security.
Right. Yeah.
And so part of the argument that the right wing has been making through this is these documents, they're not classified documents. The fact that many of them are marked as classified, as we now know from the receipt that the FBI gave to Trump's lawyer. They're marked as classified, top secret, and in fact some are SCI, which is sensitive compartmented information. And those ones, the SCI ones, are the ones that are only supposed to be viewed in a SCIF, or a sensitive compartmented information facility. And there's various things that a building or a room needs to have to be designated as a SCIF, and Mar-a-Lago certainly does not fit those criteria.
Yeah.
So he shouldn't have those.
I shouldn't have those. No.
One of the arguments that the right wing has been making is these aren't classified because Trump was president and had the ability to declassify them and just did. He just declassified them, and he's claimed. I think it's him that's claimed. It may be just one of his lackeys. That he had a standing order, like a standing rule, that any document he took from the White House to Mar-a-Lago was therefore automatically declassified.
Does such a thing exist?
Well, 18 of his administration officials have come out and said that's not a thing.
Right. Yeah.
Including people like Mick Mulvaney and various people who would normally leap to his defence have gone, yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That also not a thing you can do.
By the way,
there's Executive Order 13526 lays out a process for declassifying stuff.
Right.
And it doesn't involve just the president going, see all this stuff? That's declassified now.
Because I've just taken it off site.
That's not a thing.
Every single time, every 280 odd times he went. That was...
But even if it was a thing, it doesn't matter. Because none of the 3 statutes that are listed on the search warrant are about classified documents. The documents that they refer to don't have to be classified to fit within the breaking of the law.
Breaking of the law, right, yes.
So that it doesn't matter. Even if he did somehow have some magical declassification power, which he retained beyond the end of his presidency and could declassify them right now, that
just
doesn't
by
matter.
Lifting them into his golf cart. Yeah.
It's not true. That's not a thing. So another thing that you'll have heard probably is the fact that because there were nuclear documents potentially in this lot,
right,
that even if he did try and declassify them, he can't. The president can't declassify nuclear documents. That's not fully accurate. The president's declassification powers, if he follows the procedures, are quite wide-ranging. There is a thing in the Atomic Energy Act which essentially says that any government documents that have to do with atomic weapons or nuclear weapons or whatever are another form of secret. They're called restricted documents.
Right.
So that would be a different law that he's breaking to take them. It's probably it realistically is a law that as president he's potentially immune from. It's really the wording of the law probably means that he wouldn't be able to be prosecuted for it. He'd certainly have a good defence, but it's not accurate to say he can't declassify nuclear documents.
Right.
It's a different form of secret document that's governed by a different law, and all of these other laws that are on the search warrant still apply.
Wasn't there a kind of weird, chaotic, somewhat defence that they leaped to say, well, the kind of nuclear secrets or nuclear documents that he's got, you can all get?
Kind of.
You could look them up right now. They're available on Google. They're probably on your phone.
Yeah, one of the arguments that has been made is, the government classify everything. Lots of these documents that they say are top secret, they're not. They're not really.
Not.
They're not.
No, it's just they're just compliment slips and the wrappers on toilet paper.
But I mean, that's
not really
essentially
classified.
That argument is, well, yeah, okay, so there's a speed limit, but there was no one else around.
Yeah, no, we went.
I wasn't doing any harm.
It was fine. It was fine.
Yeah,
because I'm the government.
They're saying he only technically broke the law.
Yeah, that's how everyone breaks the law.
Yeah.
Technically,
but
because here's the law: you didn't do what it said.
Yeah.
You did something in contravention of that. So technically, yes, because that's how we measure these things. Yeah, by levels of technicalness. Yeah.
But Trump's main arguments were essentially, I don't have any documents I shouldn't have.
Right.
The FBI planted the documents they say I had. I do have the documents, but I declassified them, so it's okay.
These are the documents I gave back already.
Oh yeah, no, they should have. They didn't need to come and take them. They could have just asked.
Which
they did, and he didn't give them back.
Despite the fact that they did, and he didn't give them. He didn't even reply for months on end.
Yeah,
and they knew there's a big chunk of them missing.
Yeah,
and so they said, yeah, can we have those back? And he didn't reply.
Yeah.
And then they came round and said, we're going to come get those. And they said, why didn't you just ask me?
Oh, and the latest argument I've heard is that he was just like keeping them safe.
Oh, okay.
You know, he moved them from the White House.
Yeah, to notoriously unsafe to
the basement of his the unsecured basement of his oceanfront golf course,
where they thought
to make sure that they were well looked after.
Maybe we should put a padlock on the cupboard. Whatever. But
they eventually, when asked by the FBI, put a shitty padlock on the cupboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a golf course. It's a resort, where people who have lots of money
the president
are able to just wander around, and people who are, let's face it, probably illegal immigrants are bus boys and cleaners and work there and kind of can go from room to room and
in search of a broom. Yeah.
Yes.
And also, didn't they employ the argument that he was a bit busy because of the insurrection?
Yeah. It was a crazy time, January.
I didn't know whether I'd be in the White House or not, so I hadn't packed. So I just picked up everything because I was busy organising an insurrection. So I thought I'd still be there. So when it came to moving, I just scooped up everything. I didn't know what else was in the boxes. And people have asked, did you ever think that your podcast would cease to be relevant once he was out of office? Well, you tell us. These questions should be asked. Yeah. And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
Dr. Oz has been having a bit of trouble campaigning against Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman for a Senate seat, mostly because he's really bad at campaigning, and Fetterman is amazing at it and never runs out of ways to point out that Oz is from New Jersey. But one of Oz's team came up with a slam dunk idea last week, a surefire way to not only prove to the electorate that multimillionaire TV star Dr. Oz is completely relatable to the average working class Pennsylvanian voter, but also to show he understands how hard their day-to-day life is under Joe Biden's inflation crisis. He recorded a video at a popular local grocery store, Wegmans, where he started out by getting the name of the store wrong and then announced that he'd been sent by his wife to buy vegetables for crudités. He proceeded to wander around collecting random veg and just piled them in his arms like a contestant on Crackerjack. See, Mark's not the only one who can make 40-year-old niche British TV references.
Crackerjack!
Anyway, Oz collected broccoli, asparagus, carrots and pre-made guac and salsa, which he figured came to over $20 before even getting any tequila. How can the average hard-working Pennsylvanian be expected to afford their regular crudités? To be fair, unlike most of Oz's campaign videos, this one did go viral, but mostly because people were asking why the fuck he was planning on dipping raw asparagus in salsa, what crudités are, and why he didn't just buy the $13 veggie tray instead. Mm-hmm. Fetterman, of course, had fun making fun and raised over $500,000 for his campaign in the process.
In what seems to be the perfect UK/US crossover, just as surrealist inspiration, Isidore Ducasse wrote, "As beautiful as the chance encounter on an ironing board of a sewing machine and an umbrella, actor and failed London mayoral candidate and right-wing opinion haver for money, Lawrence Fox, has landed his first acting role since the Inspector Morse spin-off Lewis, playing Hunter Biden in a Breitbart film called My Son Hunter. Presumably Jared Kushner was busy, or too fat. Delightfully, the teaser looks terrible, though not as bad as Tucker Carlson's testicle-tanning masterpiece. And if we know anything about teasers, it is that you put all the best bits in it, because clickbait. So the actual film is going to be a stinker. In a press release received by Indie100.com, a warning is given that the film contains sex, prostitution, drugs, cronyism, money laundering, a laptop from hell, the selling out of America, the big guy, corn pop, more sex, additional drugs, and family. And we thought the far right didn't like trigger warnings. Lawrence Fox must be laughing all the way to the bank. He gets to align himself with more right-wing nut jobs, break into America, and never have to darken the mayor's waiting room in London again. Let's hope they paid him up front and not after waiting to see him act. The film company's CEO Larry Solov goes on, My Son Hunter is a film they never wanted you to see, which is precisely why Americans must. Now, if that's not going to get us watching it here at Fallacious Towers, I don't know what is.
I mean, we're definitely watching
We're
it.
definitely going to watch that one.
Comes out in September, so
can't wait.
Definitely watching it.
Yeah.
Trump once claimed he would be the greatest jobs-producing president ever. And while he actually left office with the worst jobs record since Herbert Hoover, he, his business and his administration have certainly created a lot of work for lawyers, judges and prison guards. Guards at Rikers Island will soon be welcoming Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg, who has pled guilty to 15 felonies, including tax fraud for the firm, for which he faces a measly 5 months in prison. You may remember a few of the crimes he committed, as we mentioned them before. They included giving Weisselberg and other executives untaxed benefits, including apartments, cars and private school fees. All told, it amounted to avoiding $1.7 million of taxes. If you're wondering if that 5 months deal includes a bit of testifying against Trump, the answer is kind of, but not really. He will likely be required to testify against the company, but not against Trump himself or his family members, and it's not part of a formal cooperation agreement, so prosecutors don't get to go back on the deal if he doesn't give them what they want. So it's not great, and it sure sounds like they could have held out for more, especially since these crimes are very well documented and could likely have been an easy case to prosecute if it went to trial. But I'll reluctantly take anything that might jeopardise the future of the Trump Organisation. And anyway, we've still got Steve Bannon's sentencing hearing to look forward to.
Oh, yeah. In the UK, in the old days, before they became a constant thing, we used to have culture wars each spring, when various concerned groups got het up about the works nominated for the Turner Prize art competition, dismissing them as stupid, frivolous, attention-seeking, without any merit whatsoever, and morally corrupt. Cue the Dallas CPAC, where one of the booths gives you a silent disco headset that plays harrowing testimony from people arrested for participating in the Capitol riot on January 6th. Freelance journalist Laura Jadid shared footage on Twitter where, instead of dancing, you stand around and watch an orange jumpsuited guy in a cage crying and chalking up days on a blackboard. Whilst previous year's CPAC attendees chanted "lock her up" about Hillary and her emails, this year they actually locked someone up to evince wallet-opening sympathy. Tony Vitor of Crooked Media called it a weeping insurrectionist pyjama boy art installation, and the Atlantic staff writer McKay Coppins added right-wing victimhood as performance art is actually the whole point of CPAC, so this makes sense. Playing Weeping Pyjama Boy is Brandon Stracker, who turned state's witness and did not serve any time, and has now spent more time locked up in a fake prison than he ever did for being involved in the January 6th insurrection. WUSA 9 reported that one person Mr. Straker shared information about with the FBI is serving a 60-day jail sentence, with prosecutors saying his information was valuable. So is it irony at play here? The right don't do that. Stupidity? Gullibility? I don't know, but I do know I would have preferred one of those living statues who only move about when you put money in the hat. At least that way you could see how valuable Straker really was.
They say a fool and his money are soon parted, and that also seems to be true for far-right pro-forced birth arseholes. Kansas anti-abortion activist and conspiracy theorist Mark Geetson has maxed out his credit cards to the tune of $120,000 to pay for a partial recount of the vote for a proposed amendment to the state constitution which would have restricted abortion access. That's the vote which the pro-choice side won by 18 percentage points. So, good luck with that. It's only a partial recount because Geetson couldn't afford the $229,000 it would have cost for a full recount, despite offering to put his house up for collateral. So instead of all 105 counties, they're only recounting votes in 9 of the most populous counties in Kansas, which represents about half of all the votes cast. Unfortunately for Geetson, those are mostly urban population centres, so the pro-choice vote in those counties prevailed by 31 percentage points. So yeah, really, really good luck with that. And if Kansas State Elections Director Brian Caskey is listening, I'm sure he is, he's a big fan, I'd just like to say, Brian, I think it's very unfair of you to refuse to take Mr. Geetson's house as collateral. He's clearly very passionate about this, and if that's a risk he wants to take, I think you should let him.
We're perfectly prepared for you for him to take that risk. Yeah, and it's foolish of you not to take that on. Chief U.S. District Judge Mark Walker has suspended partial enforcement of Florida's Stop Woke Act, a bill that Republican governor and rejected because it was simply too damn frightening demagogue and face model Ron DeSantis endorsed and signed into law in April. The bill restricts how companies and schools discuss race and would limit the way that private companies carry out mandatory diversity, equity and inclusion trainings. Companies that have 15 employees or more could face civil lawsuits if someone accuses them of violating the law. Judge Walker blocked the employer portion of the law, saying, like Hawkins in Stranger Things, the First Amendment was being turned upside down. Normally, the First Amendment bars the state from burdening speech, whilst private actors may burden speech freely. But in Florida, the First Amendment apparently bars private actors from burdening speech, whilst the state may burden speech freely. Misunderstanding the communication as only a DeSantis comms director could, Taryn Fenske announced, Judge Walker has effectively ruled that companies have a First Amendment right to instruct their employees in white supremacy. We disagree and will be appealing his decision. Well, far be it from us to deny your First Amendment right to freely express your thoughts using the power of speech to disagree, but you're wrong, Taryn. And if you weren't being paid shitloads of money to have vote-seeking demo batshit opinions on behalf of a fat, hairless, tone-deaf, upside-down Eddie Munson running for president in 2024, you'd be able to admit to it too.
If you, dear listener, are the kind of person with a strong enough stomach to occasionally flip over to Fox News to see what snake oil they're selling today, or if you follow a single Republican on Twitter, you've probably heard that Joe Biden and his evil team of Democrats are quadrupling the size of the IRS by hiring 87,000 new gun-toting IRS agents who are coming for you and whose job description requires that they're prepared to use deadly force against you specifically while they audit you and drag you, bleeding presumably, off to jail. However, as a now jaded listener of this very show, you may already suspect that this is a steaming pile of bullshit. And I'm happy to say you would be right. The number kind of stems from the $78 billion of additional funding the IRS will be getting thanks to the fantastic and now fully passed Inflation Reduction Act. A Treasury report back in May said that this kind of investment would allow the IRS to hire around 87,000 new employees. However, much of those would simply be replacing the current employees who are due to retire in the next 5 years, which is over 40,000 employees. The additional employees would simply raise the total workforce back to the levels they were at around a decade ago before chronic underfunding depleted their numbers. And of course, not all employees are agents. These new hires would also include IT professionals, cafeteria workers, support staff and so on. Only about 5% of the current IRS is made up of agents. Finally, they're not coming for you. Unless you earn over $400,000, that is. And if you do, have you considered becoming a patron over at patreon.com/ftrump?
For God's sake.
Yes, IRS Commissioner Charles Rettig, a Trump appointee by the way, said the proposal would direct that additional resources go toward enforcement against those with the highest incomes rather than Americans with actual income of less than $400,000. So you can see why Republicans are freaking out.
In teeny tiny Britain this week, Liz Truss, the binatone robot Theresa Thatcher May wannabe Margaret, powered by the same technology that the XL95 track and trace system ran on, is in sore need of upgrading. The automaton appeal to the red meat slavering right wing seems to be working fine. 1 minute she's slagging off the media, the next she's accusing British workers of not grafting enough, a third she's asking what's wrong with profit at the expense of people, and the fourth she's bemoaning the quality of education provided by the various schools that she attended. However, the human, well, what passes for human bit, is in need of updating. Unfortunately, the TrustBot has only a 3.5 floppy drive, and the operating system therefore runs as 746 disks, so we're only as far as one apology to the media, a garbled denial of a resurfaced article advocating charging people for visits to their doctor that's been paid for already by the National Insurance, and free at the point of access NHS. Something about wearing really cheap earrings, and a memo addressed to her about imagining that there are actual voters at the other end of the camera and not just the cover of Vogue. And whilst Gove says Truss is taking a holiday from reality, the one British worker who has never grafted in his life is on his second holiday in as many weeks and is only responding to things he can be asked to. So, we haven't heard from Boris at all for a long time. It's been bliss, almost, apart from all the poo in all the sea off all the British coastline, the 10% inflation and the bread and water shortage that you can't do anything about because of the transport strikes and the fuel subsidy not being passed on by the insanely rich fuel companies. Yeah, but apart from all that, it could be a paradise. Paradise? Oh, shut up.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this week. You'll find the show notes at fallacioustrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid and want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we used a fallacy ourselves, let us know. And if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, or simply tell one other person in person about how much they'd like our podcasts. And you could support the show at patreon.com/ftrump. Just like our strawman level patrons Steve Bickle, Schmutz, Mark Reich and Albert R. Buchanan, and our true Scotsman level patrons Kaz Tui, Andrew Houck, Max Beaver, and our top patron Lauren. Thank you so much for your continued support, everyone. It really is very much appreciated.
And you can connect with those awesome people as well as us and other listeners in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Fallacious Trump.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission. So until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right. Go home to mommy. Bye. Bye.